The Gruber family sensed something lurking. Keys went missing, and footsteps led to their attic, but no intruder was found. Soon after, they were massacred in a way that defied explanation. And as investigators uncovered chilling evidence, the killer remained a ghost. This is the story of the Hinterkaifeck murders, one of Germany's most puzzling unsolved crimes. We're diving deep into this case today, so buckle up.
You know what's so eerie about this case? It's that buildup of unsettling events before the murders, like the family was being stalked, tormented by an unseen force.
Right. Okay, so let's set the scene. We're 1922, a remote farmstead named Hinterkaifeck.
Yeah.
Nestled in the Bavarian countryside about 70 kilometers north of Munich.
Isolated.
Yeah, exactly. Isolated. And the family living there consisted of Andreas and Cäzilia Gruber, their widowed daughter Viktoria Gabriel, and her 2 children, 7-year-old Cäzilia and 2-year-old Joseph. And they had just hired a new maid, Maria Baumgartner, who arrived just hours before everything went down.
Before the horrifying events unfolded. And you know the family dynamics. They add another layer of intrigue to this story. Victoria's husband, Karl, had been presumed dead in World War I, but his body was never recovered.
Okay.
And there were whispers that Joseph might not have been Karl's son, and even rumors of an incestuous relationship between Victoria and her father, Andreas.
Wow, so there were already secrets and tensions simmering beneath the surface.
Exactly.
And then these strange occurrences start happening. The family's previous maid just up and quit.
Yeah, she claimed the house was haunted.
Haunted? What did she see?
Well, she'd heard noises coming from the attic, things being moved, footsteps.
Footsteps, okay, so like classic haunting stuff.
Imagine that feeling of dread, like something is terribly wrong.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just the maid. Andreas later found a newspaper from Munich on the property one he hadn't bought.
Okay.
It's a small detail, but you have to think back then a newspaper appearing out of nowhere would have been truly unsettling.
Right, like who would leave a newspaper there and why? And then just days before the murders, Andreas finds something even more disturbing. Tracks in the fresh snow, leading from the forest to a broken lock on the farm's machine shed.
It's like pieces of a puzzle, each one adding to the sense of an unseen presence closing in on the family.
Right.
And then there's the story of Victoria fleeing the farm after a fight, being found wandering in the forest.
Oh yeah, that detail. That was recounted by a school friend of young Cäzilia, right?
Exactly. Makes you wonder, what was Victoria running from? Was it a domestic dispute, or was she trying to escape something more sinister?
It's chilling to think about knowing what was about to happen.
And what makes it even more disturbing is that despite these warnings, these glimpses of something being terribly wrong, no one could have predicted the brutality that was about to unfold. Now let's delve into that fateful night, March 31st, 1922. It was a Friday, and the new maid, Maria Baumgartner, had just arrived that afternoon.
Oh, right.
Her sister had accompanied her and left after a short visit. Likely the last person to see the family alive.
So it's almost like the killer was waiting for the right moment to strike, for everyone to be present. You know what's so haunting about this case? It's that we can piece together a likely scenario of how the family was lured to their deaths.
One by one.
Yeah, one by one.
Yeah, it seems the killer began by drawing Andreas, Cäzilia, Victoria, and young Cäzilia to the barn.
Okay.
Maybe they used a noise to lure them, something that would sound like one of the animals in distress.
Right.
Each one venturing out through the stable into the barn,
Right.
only to meet a horrifying end.
And the murder weapon, was it ever found?
It was identified as a mattock belonging to the farm, but strangely it was never recovered. Each victim suffered fatal blows to the head.
It's hard to even imagine the terror they must have felt. But the nightmare wasn't over. The killer then entered the house and killed 2-year-old Joseph in his cot and Maria Baumgartner in her bedroom.
It's a level of brutality that's hard to comprehend.
Yeah.
But here's where it gets even stranger.
Okay.
Instead of fleeing, the killer stayed at the farm for days. They lived among the bodies, tending to the animals, eating the family's food, even lighting fires in the house.
It's as if they wanted to maintain this facade of normalcy, to delay the discovery of the crime.
Right.
It sends chills down my spine.
The isolation of the farmstead certainly played a role in that delay.
Right.
For 4 days, the bodies lay undiscovered. It's almost unbelievable how many missed signals there were.
You'd think someone would have noticed something was off.
You would think so. Young Cäzilia didn't show up for school. The family missed Sunday worship, and a couple of coffee sellers and a mechanic visited the farm during those 4 days, yet none of them realized anything was amiss.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it was Lorenz Schlittenbauer, a neighbor, who finally discovered the bodies.
Yes. He had sent his son and stepson to check on the family after growing concerned about their absence. Imagine their horror upon finding the bodies of Andreas, Cäzilia, Victoria, and young Cäzilia stacked in the barn.
Oh my God.
Shortly after they discovered the bodies of Maria and little Joseph in the house.
That's a discovery that would haunt you forever. But as shocking as the murders themselves were, the ensuing investigation only deepened the mystery of Hinterkaifeck.
Right.
Right.
The initial investigation was chaotic.
Okay.
Several people had interacted with the crime scene before the police arrived.
Oh no?
Moving bodies, touching objects, even preparing meals in the kitchen.
Talk about contaminating a crime scene.
It was a nightmare for investigators.
It's like something out of an Agatha Christie novel where everyone becomes a suspect.
Absolutely. And remember, this was 1922.
Right.
Forensic science was in its infancy.
Yeah.
Despite the challenges, the autopsy did reveal some crucial details. We've already mentioned that the mattock was never found, but young Cäcilia's body also showed signs of prolonged suffering.
Oh, God.
Indicating she had remained alive for hours after the attack.
That poor child. To think of her trapped in that barn, it's just heartbreaking.
Yeah, and there's one more peculiar detail.
Okay.
The victims' skulls were removed and sent to Munich for further examination, but later disappeared, adding yet another bizarre twist to this already complex case.
It's mind-boggling. A brutal massacre, a killer who lingers, and then the missing skulls. Did investigators ever determine a motive?
That remains one of the biggest mysteries of Hinterkaifeck. Robbery was quickly ruled out because a large sum of money was found untouched in the house. Suggests a much more personal, maybe even vengeful motive.
Okay, so let's dive into the suspects. Where do we even begin?
Well, one figure immediately stands out. Victoria's supposedly deceased husband, Carl Gabriel.
Oh, right.
Remember, he was presumed dead in World War I, but nobody was ever found.
Yeah.
This fueled speculation that he might have faked his death and returned to seek revenge.
Could he have been the one leaving the newspaper? Maybe trying to send a message?
It's possible. Some people even claimed they had seen Carl alive after the war. There were whispers that he might have been a prisoner of war in Russia, perhaps even becoming a Soviet officer and returning under a new identity.
Wow. Adding fuel to the fire were the rumors surrounding Joseph's parentage, right?
Exactly. Some suspected Joseph was not Carl's son, but the result of an incestuous relationship between Victoria and her father. It was a known secret in the village, and Andreas had even been convicted of incest with his daughter.
Wow, so the family already had a dark history. Did the police ever find any hard evidence linking Carl Gabriel to the murders?
No, nothing concrete. But then there's another intriguing suspect, Lorenz Schlittenbauer, the neighbor who discovered the bodies.
Wait, the man who found the bodies, why would he be a suspect?
Well, there are a few reasons. Firstly, rumors circulated that he had been romantically involved with Victoria and might even have been Joseph's father.
Oh, okay.
Imagine the potential for a love triangle gone wrong.
Jealousy, revenge.
Precisely. Adding to the suspicion was Schlittenbauer's behavior at the crime scene. He seemed to know his way around the house a little too well, even unlocking the front door with a key, despite a house key having gone missing before the murders.
That is pretty suspicious. Did he ever explain that?
He maintained his innocence. But there were other curious details. Later, he made comments about the crime that suggested he knew things only the killer could have known.
So did they ever arrest him?
No, there wasn't enough evidence to charge him. He even successfully sued people who accused him of the murders.
Okay, so we have a potentially vengeful husband and a suspicious neighbor. Were there any other significant leads?
Well, police explored a number of other suspects. The Gump brothers, for example. They were known members of the Freikorps, a paramilitary group active in post-World War I Germany. They had a reputation for violence and were suspected in other crimes.
Could this have been some sort of political act or just random brutality?
It's certainly a possibility. The Freikorps, born out of the chaos and disillusionment after the war, often took the law into their own hands, driven by a mix of nationalism and resentment. But again, no direct evidence linking them to the Hinterkaifeck murders.
What about other suspects?
There was Carl and Andreas S. Their mother allegedly confessed on her deathbed that her sons were responsible, claiming one of them had lost a penknife at the scene. But a similar knife was later found that could have belonged to one of the victims, casting doubt on their involvement.
So many possibilities, yet no clear answers.
Despite years of investigation, numerous suspects, and countless theories, the Hinterkaifeck murders remain unsolved. The case was officially closed in 1955, leaving behind a chilling legacy of unanswered questions.
It's a reminder that some mysteries may never be fully solved, no matter how hard we try to piece together the puzzle. But the intrigue, the unsettling details, the psychological puzzle, those are things that continue to captivate our imagination.
The Hinterkaifeck murders continue to fascinate and haunt, prompting us to question the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of ordinary life. Was it a crime of passion, a long-simmering revenge plot, a random act of brutality, or something even more sinister? We may never know for sure.
The farm was demolished a year after the murders. The site remains marked by a small shrine, chilling reminder of the horror that unfolded there. If you were to stand in that spot today, what would you feel? What secrets do you think the ghosts of Hinterkaifeck hold? Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll be back next week with another unsolved mystery.